Rev up your engines!
The British Patriot says, Scotty, has your TV and YouTube fame directly brought you more customers? Are any of your customers fans of your channel? Oh, sure. I started on TV, then I went to YouTube. I'm a lot more famous on YouTube. It's worldwide, you know. People are amazed. They meet me and I say, hey, you're just like you are in your videos. Yes, because see, I can't act. I couldn't act my way out of a paper bag. The only thing that I could play would be a movie about Scotty, and I'd play myself. Yeah, I like helping people out, you know. Sure, it brings you business because people say, hey, this guy's telling the truth about stuff, and I'll tell them the truth. Now, occasionally, I do lose a customer. They get mad at me because I tell them that their car is a piece of crap. Somebody brings a Jaguar to me and it's falling apart. I'll say, you know, the car's a piece of crap. Don't fix it. Get rid of it. Then they get mad at me. I tell the truth, and I don't care. If it hurts somebody's feelings because they bought the wrong car, well, they bought the wrong car. And maybe they should get closer to reality, not live in a fantasy world and thinking that their piece of junk car is any good. I like warning people about problems they're going to have. Now, if they don't care, somebody says somebody's going to buy a Jaguar. I get people all the time say, well, I want to buy this. I'd say, well, you know, I wouldn't buy one for you. Well, I really want one. I say, bring it over. I'll check it out. Put it on my machine. I'll tell you exactly what kind of shape it's in now. If you want to buy it, it's your money. But you tell people the truth, let them sort it out. And if they don't believe you, well, that's their loss, not mine. Roger Stone says, Scotty's interesting to listen to. He has a lot of good information. He seems to push the more expensive vehicles. Sometimes the cheaper and poorer made vehicles are a better deal financially. Now, you're not understanding me here. I really don't push anything. I talk about different vehicles, explain to people. You don't want a cheaper and poorer made vehicle. It is not a better deal financially because it's going to fall apart. You are always better spending a little bit more money and getting a better vehicle. Now, let's say you don't want to buy a brand new Toyota for $30,000. Go find a good used one. Maybe it's 10, 15 years old. You can find one for $4,000 or something. Do that. But don't go out and buy a brand new cheap vehicle because it's going to fall apart and you're going to waste your money and have to keep buying one after another after another. I remember years ago, Chrysler had a deal going with a French car company. One of my customers bought it. And I said, why did you buy that car? They said, well, you know, our Toyota cost too much and when it wore out, we thought we'd try this. Well, guess what? In 3 years, the car fell apart and they sold it to a junkyard. So you don't want to buy the cheapest, poorest made vehicle. That's a bad decision. Buy a good vehicle and just buy an older one, a used one instead. If you want to do a financial thing, do not go buy the cheapest, poorest made vehicle. It's a mistake, unless you just want a lawn ornament to park in your front or backyard. 9-8 says, I bought a 2013 Civic with 200,000 highway miles, original brakes with 50% left. All the service records for $4,000. That was a smart move. And here's why. Some people are going to say, you were a fool. You paid $4,000 for a car with 200,000 miles on it. If they really were all highway miles, and most of them had to be because the brake pads are 50% left. Highway mileage exclusive is equivalent to 10%. That's 10% of city driving. So your 200,000 highway miles is equivalent to 20,000 stop and go city driving. Now, I'm sure some of it was city driving. It wasn't all going, 60 miles an hour on the highway. But if most of it was, the thing's probably the equivalent of 30, 40,000 city mileage, and you only paid $4,000. Those are great cars. You got a good setup on it. If it would have been 200,000 city miles, no, it wouldn't have. And the brake pads wouldn't be original for sure. And there'd be a lot of stuff wearing out. But with that, no, you got a good deal. Michael R. says, Scotty, what do you think of the 2011 Chevy Silverado 5.3 motors and the longevity of them? They're good motors. They're not as well made as they used to be, but at least that's a 9-year-old one. Unfortunately, everybody's making their stuff cheaper, and GM has gone a little bit further than they probably should have. And some of them make ticking noises and have certain problems. Back in the day when you could buy a Chevy V8 and get 300,000-400,000 miles out of the engines, those days are long gone. But they're still decent made motors. They're not horrible motors. If you're going to get a Silverado, get the V8. Don't buy that crazy one that they have now that has a 4-cylinder engine. That's a mistake as far as I'm concerned. I doubt if that'll be produced all that much longer. It looks like it's been a massive failure anyways. But the 5.3 motors are decent motors. Sean Bowman says, what causes a car to die while you're driving it? Lose fuel or you lose spark. And the more common thing is if you're driving it and it stops is you just ran out of gasoline. I've had that happen. I've had so many customers over the last 52 years, and I start checking out stuff, and the first thing I check now from experience is see if there's gas in the tank. And a lot of times there's no gas in the tank. That's why they don't start. And of course, if the fuel pump goes out, the same thing happens. There's gas in the tank, but the pump doesn't pump it, so the car dies. That's the most common thing that knocks out a car. Now, some of the customers, it wasn't really really their fault because their gas gauge didn't work anymore. And they didn't know it. And they thought they still had half a tank of gas, but the gas gauge was broken. And it went full to half and just stayed at half. So then they ran out of gas. Can't blame them on that. And of course, other things, if you lose spark, something happens to your ignition system. But the ignition systems in modern day cars are pretty well built that they generally last a really long time. It's more common that they either run out of gas or the fuel pump itself goes, or if somebody's bad enough, they don't watch the temperature gauge and the engine overheats, then it'll stop where you're driving. It's goodbye engine. Kribechi says, Scotty, what do you think of a 2014 Acura V6 with a manual tranny? Is it a decent vehicle? Oh yeah, you know, they're decent vehicles to begin with. Their automatic transmissions are a little weak, but that bypass is just a standard. It's 2014, so it's only 6 years old. It isn't that old. Change your oil regularly, you know, keep up with maintenance. Those things can go a really long time. I got a customer with one of those, got 250,000. Still runs like a clock. So yeah, with a manual transmission, you're getting rid of the worst part, which was the automatic transmission. A car like that can last forever. Mr. Apple says, a Mini Cooper is my first car. Any recommendation where it should look? It has 250,000 kilometers. Okay, so that's what, like 140,000 miles on it? I'd say look for something else. They only last so long. My neighbor, she's English, and she's on her third Mini, and it wasn't like she just bought new ones because she liked the new car. She bought new ones because the old ones fell apart, and none of them reached 100,000 miles. So I would look somewhere else if I were you. Now, if you're real serious about that vehicle, first, take it to a mechanic like me. Have him do a wet and dry compression test of the engine. Do live data analysis. Road test it with his fancy computer and see what he says. Because I've never seen one with that kind of mileage that didn't already have either serious problems or soon was going to have serious problems with the engine worn out. So have that checked first at least. But I mean, personally, I'd find one with less mileage if you had to buy one, but I wouldn't even buy a used one. They just wear out too fast. Unless it was a used one that had low mileage, you got a good price on it. Edgar JX1 says, Scotty, I'm thinking of buying an 07 Silverado LT1. What do you think? And it's 2007, where they make them a lot better than they do today, 13 years later. It is a GM product. So have a mechanic check it out. Have them pay special attention to how the transmission shifts and how the differential sounds. A lot of those had weak differentials, and it's going to need the differential rebuilt. Now, let's say the differential is worn. I know guys here in Houston, they'll rebuild those things for $800 or $900, and they do a really good job. So you'd pay $800 or $900 less for the vehicle. It wouldn't be a reason not to buy it. You do want it checked out because you never know what kind of shape a vehicle is when it's used. But at least back in 2007, they were making them better than they make them today at GM. So it could be a decent vehicle if a mechanic okays it. Jason says, hey, Scotty, I got a suspension noise. My shocks are okay. I checked them. The noise happens when I drive out of drive. There's lots of things that can make noises. You're going to have to pinpoint what the noise is. But if it only happens when you go in and out of driveways, you're getting that big bump. You say you checked your shocks, but realize that cars use McPherson struts these days, most of them. They're like shock absorbers, but they're called McPherson struts. And if they bounce okay, that might not be what's the noise is. The shock absorbing part of the McPherson strut. But on the top, they have what are called strut mounts. Metal with rubber bushings in them. The rubber bushings crack and break, and then when you hit a big bump, you hear them clunk. I would check the strut mounts first, because that's a very common thing for something that's that age. As Joker, Scotty, what are your thoughts on engine swapping a 2004 Mustang V6 to a 1995-liter engine? 1995-liter engine, simpler. You're going to have to change out a bunch of stuff, motor mounts and transmission, all kinds of stuff you're going to have to change out. It's going to be a lot of work, but you have a much faster vehicle. It'll be a more interesting vehicle, too. That V6 2004, it's kind of an underpowered vehicle. It'd be a fun project. You're going to do something like that, and you're mechanical. Fine, go out and do it, but don't buy it and then pay a mechanic to do it unless you don't care about money, because they're going to charge you a small fortune for doing that stuff. I know guys that do that stuff. They do it for rich people. They have a lot of money, don't care. If you're going to do it yourself, yeah. If you're going to pay someone, realize it's going to cost you a fortune. Probably isn't it worth it then. Jesse S. says, what are your thoughts on the Impossible Whopper? Yeah, you know, a hamburger made out of vegetable material. Okay. You know, when I was going to college, I was a vegetarian one year just to see. I got down to like 145 pounds. I was a string bean. You do feel good. I do have to admit, you know, it clears yourself out. There's no arguing that. But when you get a mass-produced thing like that, I don't know if it's any better than eating meat. Me, I like eating meat, but I generally like eating higher quality meat. Hamburger meat that they use at hamburger mass-produced places like McDonald's and Burger King, yeah, the quality of that meat isn't all that great. You probably are better off eating stuff made out of plant material. I'd still want to know how it was made myself. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.